We are very supportive and have been very supportive of Ethiopia's macroeconomic and structural reforms that are underway. This is something that has been underway since homegrown economic reforms, and then there has been a renewed effort by the government in that respect. It's hard. Let's just be clear. And so I want to applaud the government and the leadership of the Ministry of Finance and a whole range of ministries, and of course the Prime Minister, in accepting the challenge to move forward into the full market economy structure globally, going from the model that Ethiopians knew over many years, one that had its limitations, to one that can be dynamic, one that is growth-oriented and allows the freedom for individuals and companies to grow with their ideas, with their energy, without the fetters of the past, is something that's really important. What that means on a specific basis is hard. So as I mentioned earlier, the issue related to, or the restrictions related to the exchange rate matter was holding the economy back in ways that everybody understood. I think the traders in Mercado understood this just as well as international business people and those in the Ministry of Finance. But it took boldness to break away from that pattern. And we're pleased that the government made that decision. And we're seeing all kinds of positive effects as the exchange rate has adjusted to a new normal. This is something that is going to require constant engagements and tactical maneuvers along the way. And that's normal. That's how ministries of finance, that's how our Treasury Department works to ensure macroeconomic stability in our country, and you see it around the world. And so I'm confident that the ministry and its sister ministries are working hard in that respect. But it's not just the macroeconomic issue related to exchange rates. The conditions in which, the regulatory conditions in which businesses operate, both foreign businesses, Ethiopian businesses, large ones, startups, enormous ones, agriculture, finance, etc., all depend on proper and modernized regulatory frameworks. And the Ethiopian government is undertaking this right now in cooperation with and collaboration with its friends in the international community, including the United States. We're incredibly pleased to see that the Ethiopian government has the ambition to join the World Trade Organization next year. It's a very ambitious timeline, but we think that the government is very serious about that. And so there is an effort underway to engage with relevant stakeholders, including the United States, through the U.S. Trade Representative's Office, to address and to find solutions for how to expand market access for international companies to work either here in Ethiopia, to export to Ethiopia, for Ethiopia to engage in the world economic format more effectively. Ethiopia is moving into a very serious, very high-level macroeconomic and financial world. It's hard. It's not easy at all. There are a lot of trade-offs. There are a lot of vested and entrenched interests that benefited from the old ways that have to change, but they're changing. And so we're really pleased to be part of that. Thanks for your question. And let's disaggregate your question a bit. Yes, you're right. I was here under the previous administration, and I'm here as the U.S. ambassador under the Trump administration. There is much more continuity than is offered in your question. And as you pointed out, my recent statement about the conflict underscores that continuity. At the end of the day, we all recognize that so much of the concerns that you pointed to are related to ongoing conflict. And you mentioned Amhara, you mentioned the Oromia. That's exactly the core of the issue that we're talking about. And as long as that instability continues, it's very difficult for society to achieve the stability that Ethiopians want. And so I have tried to recognize that and to put our energies into encouraging Ethiopians and all stakeholders with absolutely, definitely including the government itself, the federal government, which has primary responsibility for leading the people in the right direction, but others have responsibilities as well to enable Ethiopia to move forward and not backwards, to get away from the status quo in certain contexts, particularly related to the conflicts in those areas in which you mentioned. So that the full potential of this country, the full potential of its economy and its people can be realized. That's where we were before, that's where we are today, and that's where we'll be going forward. I'm pleased that you raised my statement. It's an opportunity for me to amplify and to discuss a little bit about the statement and how we have seen the response to my statement. And I want to start with the core of the message, which was directed at the people and the leadership of the country to enable the people to live the kind of lives that they want to live. I said that it's time to put people first by implementing lasting solutions to Ethiopia's internal conflicts, enabling internally displaced persons to return home, ensuring children can attend school and access healthcare, and ending lawlessness that masquerades as part of the armed struggle. I don't know if anybody here disagrees with any of those statements. I don't know if any of your listeners or those who are watching this would disagree with any of that. From the perspective of the United States, who has been a friend of Ethiopia for many years and a friend of the Ethiopian for many, many years, and a country that is the largest provider of humanitarian assistance to enable those who have been displaced by those conflicts to help the children who need the vaccinations and healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. We're proud to do all that, but we recognize that that is not sustainable outside the political resolution of these conflicts that is necessary. I think everyone understands that a political resolution is necessary, and from my standpoint, it's time to move in that direction. I am positive and I am optimistic in a certain sense, because the response that we saw from some of the factions, the OLA, some of the factions of the Fano, I consider to be positive. Of course, they offered long lists of preconditions. The way I look at this, however, I think how they responded, which is very seriously, is that in both of those instances, Ethiopia is much closer to the beginning of the end than any other place. Of course, preconditions, we all understand those to be for public consumption. But what I see from their engagement with my statement is a recognition that at the end of the day, there has to be a move forward, not backwards. So it's incumbent at this point for them and for the federal government to find a way to make that more concrete. And we look forward to that. There's no one way that that is going to happen. That's up to Ethiopians to determine. That's up for the federal government and the other groups to figure out how to build that road forward. But from our standpoint, the United States government, it's time. You referenced the mistake, and let me just address that here very briefly. It was a mistake. This was nothing more, nothing less than a mistake. We took an earlier draft, one that I had never really seen, I had never approved, and due to an administrative error, this was unfortunately put out before, and then we reverted back to the statement which I just referenced now, which does reflect exactly where we're coming from. And I'm pleased to say that the intended audiences understood that and responded accordingly. They focused on the substance, and it's time to accelerate the engagement with that substance, not just from the United States, but amongst themselves to create that path forward. Thanks for that question. Look, I'm pleased to see that the kind of response on a public level is qualitatively different than what we've seen before. The engagement with our statement, the engagement with the concept of peace is changing, and that means that the landscape can change for the positive. What that means in terms of what is realistic, peaceful, positive, that's for the FANO, that is for the federal government to determine. Just as long as there is a pathway forward that all the groups, all the stakeholders understand, recognize, and can act upon, that is what the people need. That is what the region recognizes as what needs to happen going forward, and that's what my country, my government, would like to see for the Horn of Africa and for Ethiopia. Now, thank you for that question. First of all, I think we should all applaud former Special Envoy Mike Hammer for his role in facilitating peace and stability in the Horn of Africa and certainly here in Ethiopia. And we all wish him very well in his current challenging assignment in Cuba. Every administration approaches how to staff itself and how to create policy differently. And I can say that the Trump administration has said from the beginning of its tenure that it intends to be much less focused on what it considered to be a excessive number of special envoys that had been seen in previous administrations, and to concentrate on engaging and developing policy through embassies on the ground without that huge number of special envoys. Now, does that mean that the current administration doesn't have special advisors? No, quite the opposite. We all have seen that, for example, Special Advisor Boulos is very active in Africa as well as the Middle East. And so we have a range of tools and structures that enable us to engage effectively diplomatically in the Horn of Africa. And I'm very confident that we have what we need in order to engage.